Nigeria, oh our Nigeria. We write every week, so we now seize the opportunity to be reading it. Some people will prefer to read it because perhaps they do not have the time to read, so they may prefer to listen to it. So we are now reading it for everyone who wants to listen. My recent visit to the holy city was the second time I was there. Wow. Well, courtesy of the benevolence of Honorable Mai Malabuni, the governor of Yobe State, and that's my state, Yobe. The first was when I was practically wheeled there as a result of a debilitating illness that required first-class medical treatment. Therefore, the recent visit was a follow-up treatment, and happily, my doctors attested to my improved health. The governor has made it a state policy to provide free medical services to anyone who can come to Yobe. To that end, he has upgraded the state health system to be among the best in the country and most likely the best in the north, as attested to by no less a person than the Katsina State Governor, Alhaji Umar Dikko, in an interview with the BBC House of Service. Where the medical solution for an indigent can only be found outside the country's shores, Governor Boni's administration has implemented a policy to facilitate that opportunity for those who apply and receive approval from a competent medical advisory committee. Yet, in both instances, I wept for Nigeria, my country. Yes. It is possible, desirable, and acceptable for a Muslim to shed tears, especially in the presence of the Kaaba, driven by longing and love for Allah and the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, my tears were for Nigeria and the feeling of fear that we were not getting it right. I found myself questioning whether we might have lost direction and are just groping in the dark, with evil lurking at every turn. First and foremost, there is no fear of insecurity whatsoever in the place. There was a time I was at the hospital until 1 a.m., sensing that I might have to stay the night due to various tests being carried out on me. So I asked my son, who was with me, to return to the hotel about 70 kilometers from the hospital to bring some medications for me. I felt no fear, anxiety, or doubt in allowing him to return to the hotel alone in a taxi, Bolt or Uber, that late at night, because I knew no evil was lurking about. In the place, you can go to bed with your doors wide open. In Makkah, it is common to see a motorist park in front of a shop, leave the engine running with the air conditioning on, which means the key must be in the ignition, and go in to buy necessities, returning to drive off after loading their purchases in the boot. There is even a strong assurance. There is a strong assurance that any person who stole the car, or anything for that matter, will be apprehended quickly. Not only does a criminal never remain free after a crime, but the justice system there is a real definition of justice because it is meted out appropriately. Everything works almost perfectly there. The hospital staff carry out their duties without expecting any appreciation from patients, appreciation in courts, and the patients themselves do not feel pressured to offer anything in return. Regardless of one's ideological, religious, or political beliefs, one cannot deny that the welfare of citizens is paramount in their leaders' policies. A good example of this was when the kingdom's leadership responded to the global increase in oil prices, which particularly affected oil-producing nations and pushed up the cost of imported goods like food. Among many other far-reaching measures to ease citizens' lives, the government imported essential items, stabilizing prices. This stability extends to their currency as well. It holds its ground against the dollar or euro, unlike the naira, which trembles before the dollar. You know, when you go there last 1 year ago, today it's the same amount. I witnessed fully air-conditioned pedestrian crossings with lifts at both ends. I thought to myself that in Nigeria, such facilities will be turned into makeshift homes or places for selling wares and for beggars. That is, if the lifts and air conditioning units had not already been cannibalized. Do we even have working air conditioning units in key public offices and facilities, let alone for pedestrians? Only a benevolent leadership imbued with empathy will contemplate putting in place such facilities to make life easy for citizens. And so we ask, can such edifices be erected in Nigeria by the leaders in the first place? But then one may ask, why? And once you find the answer, you too will cry for the country as I did. This is because there is a significant difference between Nigeria's and Saudi Arabia's leadership styles. One is focused on deliberately withholding what makes life easier, while the other prioritizes making life better for its citizens. When people understand that nothing that makes life worth living will be made available to them by those with authority over them, they lose their sense of self-worth. Anyone in this state can descend into moral depravity. Furthermore, they often scramble to meet their needs by any means necessary. This is why we see people like locusts descending upon warehouses, broken down trucks, carrying foodstuffs, and scooping petrol from fallen tankers, even though they know they are just a hair's breadth from horrible death. What is the way out? Everything boils down to leadership. Our leaders must recognize that source for the goose is also source for the gander. No one will begrudge them their 160 million naira SUVs if ordinary citizens can easily and affordably move from point A to point B. No one will care about their salaries and allowances as long as putting food on our tables does not feel like a struggle. Most importantly, we must feel secure in our land, and no crime should be overlooked or criminals allowed to roam the towns or forests freely. Thank you.